folks like us that we're not, we're not having something shoved down our throats, from some highly centralized, federal source. And so I think it was kind of important. And of course, we're awfully proud of SIMAC Minnesota. We've known for many years the quality of the individuals involved, and so it's doubly comforting for us to know that they played an integral part in this process over the years. And I think you referenced earlier this notion of the integration of science and engineering, and I think I'm correct that when we adopted our latest science, and that was 2009, right? That the integration of engineering began in Minnesota in those standards. Here's my question, though, and I'm really pleased to see the American, the ALR, which is the American
Lab Report
issue, because when I watched you on YouTube, you said something that really caught my ear in terms of what it takes to drive new opportunities, and you framed it within a systemic analysis. And so in that presentation, you talked about the need to change the equilibrium of a system is an important practice, and that the way to change a system's of equilibrium is to perturb the system. I actually wrote this down. So people right now would just say and that perturb, another way to say that is to create stress within the system. And you were speaking to my heart, particularly, and I suspect all of us here, particularly as we continue to struggle with the inequitable academic outcomes that we face in our state and our nation, primarily along racial lines, and the deep sense that perhaps something short of perturbing, creating stress within the system is going to help to change it around. The issue that I think many of us struggle with, however, and this is falling back to the American Lab Report, is that many of us have suspected that stress has almost exclusively fallen on the backs of students. And so one of the things we're wrestling with this year is the use of high stakes testing, which raises all sorts of equity issues, and frankly, the high stakes testing also being applied to teachers. And so maybe if we could just say a little bit about the importance of being very intentional about supporting students and not just simply creating stress within the system, and sort of students they're the ones who really take the stress.
Well, and when I talk about perturbing the system, I talk about it so that the overall outcome is that the students are better off. And unfortunately, I think you're right. I think that there does tend to be that stress. And I think part of that stress sometimes is the fact that science really can be the great equalizer. I mean, it really can engage students regardless of their background, regardless of their previous knowledge. It can engage them in such a way that they see where it fits in their life. And as we go through this, one of the things that we try to be very, very clear about is this does not need to be an initiative that is taken lightly or quickly. It needs to be thoughtful and deliberate. Some states are going to be more ready at different times than others, but the capacity building to get prepared for this type of standard is a real tangible need. We can't just roll these out. We can't adopt them one year and just roll them out to say, okay, gang, we know that you were never trained this way when you were in college, but we hope that you do okay with it. There needs to be a real capacity building. And from what I know of the Minnesota Department of Ed and their initiatives in partnership with SIMAC Men. I get the men and the math stuff. They, what I've seen them do already in getting prepared, they're already having conversations about practices. They're already ingraining that through their math science partnership programs, through the different professional development. So, not that they're committing to adopt, I want to be real clear, But they also recognize that the research behind why kids learn this has to be something that we first prepare our teachers and administrators to be able to do, so that the kids, it doesn't just fall over the kids. You know, it's not sink or swim here. This is, we best help kids by helping our teachers and helping our administrators. And you guys have an incredible network to already be able to facilitate that. The other part that I want to just kind of somewhat tangentially mention is that this also should open doors for incredible levels of collegial support. So we integrate engineering here, but to be clear, this is not full-blown engineering as we see in career tech ed. But it does give the opportunity for a great partnership to happen between the different organizations and the different teachers. So that we don't just teach science on one hall and CTE on another hall. We don't just teach science here and math here. It actually opens opportunities for us to teach whole students instead of pieces of students. I think that's another place where it falls on the kid, is they don't see that full picture, and so when they go across that graduation platform, they're not really prepared because they've only seen pieces. They've not seen the full picture. So this is definitely meant to perturb the system, put that stress on the system, but I think the real strength of this lead state initiative that we've had is I don't think any state feels that they're going to be able to adopt these this spring and turn around and adopt them in the fall. I think most states are saying, you know what, this is going to take a while, and we need to support one another as we move forward to that.
Thank you. We have a question from our lead representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much for having this presentation. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here, and I hope to see you, Mr. Pruitt, later this afternoon to ask you some questions. Before I do ask my question, I want to note that we have two FFA groups in the audience, one from Foley, who I used to represent, and one from Buffalo. And they're in the audience, and I bring this up not just to recognize them, but Mr. Pruitt, last year and the year before in our educational reform, we have now allowed the earning of a science credit in career technical.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would like you to comment on that, and I think you just affirmed it perhaps in what you just said about not piecing between the whole child as far as science, engineering, and math and technology are concerned. So would you comment on to what extent, because I'm hoping these young people are knowing, and I know their teachers do, that they can earn a science credit through their career and technical, which is often courses that our FFA members do take. So please, would you respond?
Absolutely.
Great question. Thank you.
And I'll actually start it by saying, as you can imagine, in Georgia, our ag community was quite strong as well. And we actually did a similar thing. We required 4 years of science in Georgia, and one of those science credits could be earned through our career tech. We kind of went a little bit of a different step, though, in that there's a list of courses that are specific that can be done, and those courses were co-designed with our university faculty, our technical college faculty, and K-12 teachers, because we also wanted to, it was a big deal in Georgia to make sure that, you know, our universities actually accepted those as science credits as well. So we're actually very proud of that. In fact, I would say that if you ask me what's some of my more proud things that we did in Georgia, it was actually really having a very strong message about the importance of the alignment between traditional academia and our career tech. This set of standards, because it's not prescriptive, and because it, you know, I hear people say, oh, you left out such and such. Because it's really at the core knowledge and a core concept that needs to be learned, it allows the lens to change. So in other words, you know, as a chemist, which is what I was, or am, you know, I could get in and I could talk about, you know, formulas, and I could talk about chemical reactions, and I could talk about, you know, how these reactions occur mathematically and so forth. But, you know, for a lot of my kids, that wasn't as important as perhaps helping them understand what the acid base or what the pH of soil will do to their crops. Being able to it's still a concept, understanding how, you put lime down, it changes the pH of your soil. Well, that's a chemical reaction. So it makes it more hands-on, but it also makes it more practical and useful. And I think that what you hear sometimes with people who are negative about the standards is they want to see that traditional academic list of facts, and memorizing the order of planets is not really that helpful at the end of the day, right? And so it's maybe a long way to answer your question, but what we feel when we look at these standards is we see an incredible opportunity to rethink school and to rethink how we really support kids when they graduate and become contributing members of society.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One follow-up. Mr. Pruitt, we do leave the local districts as the decision makers as to whether or not the standards from our science standards are embedded. And so that is a local decision, and we're proud that they can make that decision. I have one other question for you, though, about high-stakes testing, because as you heard the chair say, we're in the midst of a debate about keeping or changing our grad tests. To what extent is it important, though, that as we look at our future, and our future is so centered on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, if we're going to be globally competitive, to what extent is a high-stakes test or something of that nature important to the future of not only Minnesota but the United States?
Well, that's a pretty heavy question.
So, you notice everyone's sad off.
Yes, I noticed that. I noticed that. And I wanted to slow down. No, so, speaking personally, okay, I'll make that really clear. Speaking personally, I think good assessments that test what's intentioned by the learning, I think have a role to play. I think that one of the things that we have seen is that if things are not assessed, they may or may not be taught. For me, it's a bit of an equity issue because if you're not assessed, it's easy for you to say, well, we're going to do less with you because you're poor, or because you come from this zip code, or because you're this or that, and the assessment actually allows for there to be a quality check on the level of instruction. And so for me personally, I think that assessment can be good. But I will quickly also follow it up with, we don't have a whole lot of those at this point. I think that we have a great opportunity with what's going on with Smarter Balanced in Park to really change how assessment is done. I mean, teachers test their kids all the time. All of us went through tests. But the difference is that some of us went through better tests because we were required to do something with that, as opposed to bubble, ABC, and there are actually tests that can do that well, but for this set of standards in particular, just bubble tests won't work. There's got to be a change in how we do that. In fact, the National Research Council right now has a committee on the Board on Testing Assessment that will be releasing a study on how to assess this type of standard, probably within several months of the release of the actual standards themselves, because we recognize that there's got to be a change. So I think that there's some benefit to it. I think it's a way to ensure that that all kids are having access. But I also think that for it to really be effective, we've got to change how we do it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And actually be maybe even a little bit more innovative than what we've been.
Thank you, Dr. Roy. Thank you, Representative Anderson. Those questions were very much on the top of my mind as well. Members, we do have a bill before us. Here's what the chair is going to do. We have some folks who have traveled